As some of you know, I'm still a patrol officer, and it's really important to me that as a police officer, the clue is in the title, and whilst I might be a chief constable, I'm still a constable. And therefore I go out with my roads policing units regularly, at least once a month, to make sure that what I'm talking about with the national portfolio actually lands with reality on the ground, on the roads, with the skills, with the laws that we need to take people off the roads who are killing and seriously injuring others every single day, and sometimes themselves. And I was out last week, in fact, on patrol, and honestly, I wouldn't say I was shocked, because I think all of us in the room see it a lot, but I was really disappointed with the number of drivers who were driving whilst distracted. I think we gave about half a dozen tickets out for driving whilst using the phone and other distractions, and honestly, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. It was just no effort whatsoever, pretty much within the space of 2 or 3 hours. And each and every one of those drivers that we stopped, one of whom actually nearly crashed into us and still didn't see the problem, every single one of those had a reason as to why it was okay that they were on their phone. It was okay that they were on their phone because their call, their reason for using it was far more important than the lives of everybody else on the road or in the public space with them. And it did really get me thinking, particularly ahead of this conference today, how on earth, how do we try to make that difference? You know, some of them, probably most of them, were intelligent people. You know, one of them was a solicitor, another one already had 9 points on his licence and knew that actually any more would mean that he's lost his job. He was in tears, he was crying, he was begging, no sympathy whatsoever, as you can imagine, for me or my crew partner at all. But how can you, if you have got people like that who know they're going to lose their livelihoods, their houses, God knows what else, how can we possibly influence that behaviour? And that's why I think that today this conference, is absolutely of its time. Because my view is we need to get harsher. My view is that we do need to encourage the law to move with swiftness, with agility, to actually get ahead of the technology where we can. And I appreciate that's really difficult. We're incredibly lucky at the moment that we've got a really enthusiastic roads minister, Richard Holden, who really is very enthusiastic. And we've got people in the audience, Darren's here, I know, from DFT, and probably others as well, who really are working so hard together. All of you in the room are. It's one of the few portfolios where actually everyone is properly pulling and pushing in the same direction, because we all want to make sure that we save those lives and prevent those injuries. And so just a thank you to you all, really, just to start off with, for that effort and for continuing to really, truly care that we make a difference every single day, because that's why we're here. And Dean, who's at the back, who does all of the hard work, the heavy lifting on the portfolio, he will say to you that at every meeting, well, however strategic, tactical, whatever it is we have, I always draw it back to, let's remember why we are here, both at the beginning and the end of the meeting. We're here to save lives. We're here to stop those families from going through that misery. So the other thing that is just food for thought, really. I'm sure it'll probably turn into another academic study, but just food for thought, is daydreaming. So I don't know how you would ever prove that someone was daydreaming, but actually quite a lot of the time with everyone's busy lives these days, distraction isn't just about those physical devices. It's also about people kind of getting to work and saying, I have no idea how I got here. And you think, well, what happened on your journey then? And it's just food for thought as to how we can also try to make sure that people are properly fit to drive, not in the drink or the drug aspect, but fit within their minds, fit and present in the moment driving. And it's just some food for thought, really. Again, following on from some of the conversations with officers and drivers last year. Right, last week even. Right, I'm going to press this arrow, and apparently it will work. Some of you will already have seen this video, so I apologise for that. But then I also don't apologise, because I think it's really important to remind us. We're proud to have some of the safest roads in the world, yet there are still around 5 deaths and many more serious injuries on our roads every day. Policing Our Roads Together is the National Police Chiefs Council 3-year strategic plan, and it brings together all of those elements that we know are really important in terms of reducing those deaths and serious injuries on our roads. The strategy is built around 4 key pillars of activity. These are preventing harm and saving lives, tackling crime, driving technology and innovation, and changing minds. Let's explore the thinking behind each of those 4 themes and how they link into the plans and action that we will all need to take to make the difference.
Maybe more in the vehicle that's been hit by the heavy.
Please declare this now.
My wife came in sort of early in the morning, 5, 6ish, something like that, and she handed me the phone, and on the other end of the phone was the dad, and then he told me that initially my mum had been involved in a car accident and had died, and then he told me my dad had also been killed. Yeah, it's pretty bad, and you don't know if you've never had to go through this process before. You've never had to plan funerals, you've never had to do all that sort of stuff. You just deal with it however you deal with it. I don't think there's certainly no right or wrong answer, but I don't know if there's a way of explaining it. You just kind of got to muddle on.
There can't be any of us who are untouched by what we've just heard, and whether or not we've supported families who have been through it, or indeed have been through it ourselves, it should only strengthen our resolve to make sure that we work hard to make our roads safer. Hello, madam. What speed did you think you were doing as you approached us? And what do you think the speed limit is here? It's 30 miles an hour. So you were doing well over that.
Was I?
You were. Preventing harm and saving lives is a core mission of policing. We will work with our many partners across a range of agencies and organisations to achieve this mission. Preventing harm includes finding ways to reduce and prevent offending in the first place. Policing our roads plays a major part in disrupting those who abuse our road network for criminal gain. That's why we will not separate traffic offences from other crime. By targeting those causing the most harm on our roads, we will create opportunities to enable the detection and prosecution of the most serious crime. This will involve the use of technology such as ANPR, or intelligence from our partners and the public, and the regulatory and coercive powers of other agencies. We know that criminals use the road network to facilitate crime. It's really important that we tackle those criminals and that we do pursue them, and the most effective way of doing that is by using our resources. So the Roads Policing Strategy sets out why and how we can make the roads more hostile for those who try to use the roads in a criminal way. New technology presents a raft of policing challenges, such as dealing with e-scooters, e-bikes and other alternative mobility. As well as this, there are opportunities to prevent death and injuries on our roads. To maximise the benefits of new technological opportunities, we will work with partners to identify these challenges and opportunities and work to prevent unwelcome technological developments that compromise safety or promote offending.
Innovation is central to our delivery. New technologies improve driver safety, they support victims, and they drive our operational effectiveness. But we can't deliver alone. This strategy puts roads policing at the heart of our efforts to build partnerships, involving the very best science and technology to make roads safer today and tomorrow.
Personal responsibility is the starting point for safer roads. Laws are there to protect life, so abiding by them greatly reduces the chances of a fatal or serious collision occurring. We all need to get used to sharing space with other travel modes, and become more tolerant and more understanding through respecting the needs of others who share the roads with us.
It's really important that we all understand we have a role to play in making our roads safer places. So everyone needs to think what they can do, whether it's reducing their speed, whether it's leaving a bit earlier, whether it's not being distracted by their mobile phone. There's something we can all do to make our roads safer places.
We are determined to deliver against the aims and objectives of the new strategy, but it's not something we can hope to do on our own. Progress will be strengthened with the buy-in of our many strategic partners, each with their own skills, insight and experience. However effective we think that this strategy is, there is absolutely no doubt that the responsibility of delivery sits with everybody. It's so important that people take personal responsibility, not only for their own safety, but also for the wider safety of those people who are using that shared space around us. And by doing that, by policing our roads together, we can really make that difference that is needed. Thank you for watching that. I think that just reminds us really of the many different elements that we need to make sure we continue to improve in terms of working together. So who in the audience can tell me what that number represents? Anybody? So I'm determined to, not you, Helen, you know what it represents. I'm determined to wake you all up this morning. You've had coffee. Any guesses? Shout out. This year, yeah. So 130 people since the beginning of January so far have been killed on our roads in this country. That's 130 families who have been bereaved. That's 130 families who won't get to see those weddings, grandchildren, whatever it is that represents that. It's 130 people that have lost their lives, whose lives have been short-lived. And we should always, always remember that even if the work that we do around distracted driving saves one life, then actually that's what we must continue to do. And during this presentation, at least one person will die on our roads whilst I'm giving this presentation. It's a pretty sobering thought, isn't it? And of course, many more will be seriously injured with life-changing injuries. So that's why we must continue to work together in order to do this. And of course, many of you know my passion for this portfolio, and when it came up, it was definitely fate. Having been one of those families who has lived through that grief, who has lived through that bereavement. My father was killed on his way to work when I was a teenager one morning. He survived 27 years doing bomb disposal in the RAF and was then killed on his way to work one morning. So I can tell you firsthand that the work that you are doing to save lives and to prevent those serious injuries will make a big difference so that families don't go through what ours has been through. It's really important. They're not just a number. They're real family. They're real people. And of course, the other impact is on our emergency responders. The officer who I was crewed with last week had been to 3 fatal accidents across the 2 counties that are collaborated roads policing police, and the impact on them of seeing those horrific scenes and those from the past, whether it's ambulance, fire, police, highways, whichever emergency service it is, the impact on those emergency responders must not and cannot be underestimated. And that takes us on to the strategy. And I'm not going to dwell on this because you have seen the video, but actually, you know, it's really important, and I think changing minds is the most important part of that strategy. Policing our roads together, it's a given. We cannot do this, any of us, on our own. Preventing harm and saving lives, that's what we're all here to try and do. Tackling crime. It's really important that road crime is seen just as importantly as some of the other more recognised crime, burglary, theft, whatever you want to call it. Actually killing somebody on the road, particularly when you know that you should not be behind that wheel, when you make that choice to take drink or drugs and then still get behind the wheel of a car and go out and kill somebody. In my mind, the sentences for that should equate to those of murder or manslaughter, without a shadow of a doubt. And we need to continue to influence the judiciary around the sentencing of our road crime, and we currently are. It's really worthy, and again, thanks to DFT and others, that for the first time ever, roads policing is part of the strategic policing requirement. And that is a huge achievement, because it means that all chief constables in the country have to have due regard in terms of what resourcing they're focusing in the area of road policing and road safety. And it's really important that it's there. It's very much that enabling function as well for tackling that criminality on the road, the serious and organised crime gangs, the county lines, many of whom haven't got licences, many of whom are disqual, many of whom won't stop when they're being pursued because of their reason for being in that vehicle and what they've got in there. And so the skills of our road policing officers are often the only people who are going to bring those people to justice and actually prevent others being killed while they're trying to get away. So everyone has a part to play within this strategy. And of course, ideally, driving technology innovation, we should be able to design out any instance which impact on distraction and the harm caused by distracted driving. Surely, with the technology that we have, we can send people to the moon, we can do all sorts of things. And some of the technology which is now looking into automated vehicles, I don't think it will be that long. I think certainly within our lifetime that we will get into a vehicle that detects drugs, that detects drinks, that doesn't allow the engine to turn on, that actually doesn't allow your mobile phone or other things to distract you. And I really do hope that's the case, because whilst we can continue to drive and must continue to drive changes in behaviour and law and everything else, my belief is that it's technology that will actually be the sort of enduring panacea, really, in relation to this. And of course, one of the really good phrases that Dr. Helen Wells said at the very first meeting, which I chaired as the leader of this portfolio, was about the fact that any one of us can be both victim and offender every single day. And whilst we're all sitting there saying, of course we're not an offender, how many of us truly can sit there and say they've never gone 2 or 3 miles an hour above a speed limit? Because I suspect that there's probably not many of us. And it's quite a unique crime in that aspect, that actually we can be victims and offenders every day. But we must treat it like any other crime, and we must make sure that that prevention and enforcement is there. And you'll see we've surrounded our steering wheel by lots of E's there, because that's really important. Procedural justice, making sure that what we're doing is ethical, that it's evidentially based. And of course, a lot of the brilliant work by ARPAN really assists us to be able to do that. And so last week's patrol, again, you know, there were so many offences which were committed. And so we need to keep that pressure up, and we need to be really proactive. But there is a reality to what policing can do and what policing can enforce, because there's a reality to the resources in policing at this moment in time. And whilst we push it as hard as we possibly can, we've got to continue to work on those things which will actually prevent it and enable us to work on the solution rather than dealing with the symptoms, which frankly enforcement is. And of course, what we also know is that that distraction, the use of the phone and other elements of distraction are made much, much worse by aggravating factors, by drink and by drugs. And we've seen a significant increase, and we're doing a lot of work within the portfolio around drug driving in particular. Both vehicles that we stopped last week saliva tested positive for drugs, both of them. And you know, we stopped many vehicles, but the first 2 prisoners straight away. And no real, frankly, no real acknowledgement that that wasn't okay. And for one of them, it was the 3rd offence. So we need to continue to work on the laws such as roadside disqualification. We need to make some of those judicial procedures much more effective, much more consistent, so that actually we do have the power to take a licence once someone has tested positive on their first occasion. Because at the moment, they're going back out on the roads, back behind the wheel. We have one offender in Sussex who has been bailed 3 times now for driving whilst under the influence of drugs. And we're working really closely with DVLA around licence suspension and all sorts of things. But it is not easy because toxicology takes time to come back. And again, technology will catch up with that. But what happened on the fourth occasion is that they caused an accident. And in fact, their passenger is still on life support today, and I doubt will make it, frankly. And so we really do need to continue to work hard in terms of those aggravating factors which were distraction. And they were distracted by the fact that they were actually smoking their opiate pipe whilst driving. So maybe one day, if we can continue to work together and to really make a difference, perhaps we can make that 135, 134, or even better, 130, 100, or even better, 0, because that's what we must work towards. One less family devastated, and of course our emergency services not needing to be exposed to what they're exposed to. And I have a huge amount of confidence that actually all of those of you in the room and all of those other people who are working within this space, linked with the evidence that we thankfully have from the brilliant work of those within our PAM, but also more widely, means that from a really good evidential base, we'll be able to make such a persuasive case around changes in laws, around changes in behaviour, around changes in police resourcing. This costs the country a fortune. I probably don't need to tell many of you in the room that each KSI costs about £2.1 million. £2.1 million when everything's taken into account. That's a significant amount of money that could be invested elsewhere into the NHS or whatever. So let's work together. I'm really, really grateful for the work that you do all do every day. You wouldn't be here unless you did. And I can tell you personally, from visiting forces around the country and from having the absolute privilege of leading this portfolio, that I know that you are all making that difference. And as a result of your work, it will probably be far less families who have to endure the grief and the pain that many do. So thank you and enjoy the conference.